the Market Musings podcast. Well, welcome here onto the Market Musings podcast from Stockbox, where today we're joined by David Lenigas, of course, the Executive Chairman of Vinanz PLC, who we speak to quite a bit over on Stockbox there. And Alan Green is joining us today as well as co-host on this podcast. Well, welcome to you both. David, first of all, how are you? How are things?
Yeah, hi Mark, hi Alan. It's good to
Hi, David.
speaking today on the pros and cons of Bitcoin cryptocurrency.
Indeed, yes, indeed. And Alan, how are you?
I'm good, thank you, Mark. David and I were just comparing notes on the weather. Apparently, it's chucking it down there in Monaco. Weather more akin to the stuff we used to, Mark.
Yeah, yes, probably. What's it you said to me, David, that you go to Monaco rich and you leave poor or something?
No. One of the sayings about a lot of people, particularly English people who come to Monaco, is you arrive in a Rolls Royce and leave in a Mini. So the best thing to Monaco is keep your head down, do your work, and don't do business with other people.
That was it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm looking forward to this podcast because, of course, I know you were on a podcast before a few months ago. We obviously talked a lot more about you and your background and where you've come from, but really want to focus this podcast on crypto and the Bitcoin price, of course, with the halving, which is coming up, well, circa 10 days' time, isn't it? Quite soon, really.
It's not far away. I mean, the estimate is around about the 22nd of April. You're getting the halving, where 900 Bitcoin a day drops to about 450 Bitcoin a day available for the Bitcoin miners through their pools to get access to. So it's a fairly significant event. I mean, if you look at the halving historically, you've seen anything from an 8x to 10x rise in Bitcoin between the halvings. I mean, you're now talking Bitcoin at $70,000 US. If the same historic events happen, you could be talking Bitcoin, in the $500,000 to $700,000 mark sometime in the next 3, 4, 5 years. But there's been a dramatic change even in the sentiment because the US government SEC has approved real-time ETF 1-for-1 Bitcoin trading in the States, which has added quite a lot of extra demand into the system. So demand is definitely exceeding supply. Okay. And then around about the 22nd, when the Bitcoin halving happens, you still have the same amount of demand, but the supply is half.
And has it always been the case then that halving has basically been a catalyst event to see a new, almost baseline, higher value?
Well, historically, yes, it has. You get fluctuations up and down, either side of it, and all the way through the cycle. But historically, you see an 8 to 10x increase in the Bitcoin price.
Over what?
Reading somewhere the other day that the Bitcoin market cap is now like the equivalent of the third or fourth biggest company in the world. It's even bigger now in value than the silver market. And I saw something the other day that big fund managers are now calling the valuation of Bitcoin potentially by the end of this year at in excess of $5 trillion.
Wow,
which makes it bigger than any listed company on planet Earth.
That's staggering, isn't it?
But is that realistic then?
I can't see why not.
Yeah.
Even Jamie Dimon, the boss of JP Morgan, who's been a crypto skeptic, said that in his view, he's looking at, not that he says he'll own any crypto personally, but he says he's looking at revising his forecast for when Bitcoin could be $1 million, forward.
Well, didn't you make a public call? What was your public call? I want to say 500,000, but I can't remember exactly what you said.
Look, I can realistically see Bitcoin doubling from here this year. And beyond that, let's see where it goes. But there's a lot more transparency sort of floating around with people using Bitcoin to pay for things right now.
Yeah.
The banking system is really starting to hemorrhage. All the banking, all fiat currencies, US dollar, euros, GBP. All they are is promissory notes. It's a credit, on the basis that someone will probably honour the contract on the other side. The interesting thing about Bitcoin is it's a real hard asset that is uncorruptible. It's certainly gathering a lot of pace with respect to people paying stuff. I mean, I pay for stuff now with Bitcoin, and it's instant. It's phenomenal.
But this is interesting. It's what is driving the price there. Is it purely as a speculative risk asset because you've got gold at the all-time high?
So typically a risk-off asset. Okay, so Mark Fink, who runs BlackRock, the world's biggest fund, says in his view, once the ETF was launched, that Bitcoin ETF is now just another asset class, just like gold, right? So when you've got global fund managers buying Bitcoin ETFs through BlackRock and through Grayscale and through the other big organizations that are now approved by the SEC as just another asset class, it changes the whole concept and the credibility of Bitcoin as a currency.
Sure.
That's changed forever now. And now you've got the British government, through the FCA, literally highlighting, 3 weeks ago and 2 weeks ago with their new guidance papers that they would like to set up ETNs here, not ETFs, electronic traded funds versus electronic traded notes. But the notes here that the LSE is proposing have to be back-to-back with real Bitcoin. So for some reason, London is calling them ETNs, and the US is calling them ETFs. So you're seeing also a dramatic change here in London through the regulators, probably for fear of missing out. I mean, what America's done, I think, is really smart because one of the biggest criticisms is it's all hot black money, drugs and guns, and the black arts are all using cryptocurrency. The majority of global fraud and nastiness is done in US dollars, always has been, right? So to sit there and blame Bitcoin as the dark art of funding the world's illicit and illegal activities is a little bit sort of disingenuous. But it's certainly gathering a lot of pace.
Well, that news from the stock exchange there. Sorry, Alan, I'll just finish on this point, and then I know you're eager to get in. That's 8th of April. The applications could actually be started on the 8th of April. We're recording this on the 9th of April. So, in theory, applications could start from yesterday, and they want to start.
It's interesting.
Q2.
We've spoken to a number of big players in the United States in this space. I'm not going to mention names, right? But the timeline that the British government has given for the big players in this space to even put together a legal response is far too short. Now, their view is you might get some key European players looking to jump the channel, but they're quite unsophisticated in the way they approach things. And I really don't think that people have got time to put in an articulate response to the FCA for an LSE ETN in the time frame that they've proposed. But it's certainly a sign that things are changing. And I also think that if you look at the SEC scenario, by making ETFs physically possible, the US government is now formularizing a tax base on taxing people's profits and revenues with respect to crypto in the United States.
Sure.
Right? Yeah. That's a big, big thing for credibility. And governments can now say, well, I'm winning now out of this whole crypto scenario. It's not people are shuffling money around and I'm not getting my fair share. So you're now seeing the British government going, well, I want to be part of that scenario too. Every government's chasing tax dollars. So rather than have people trading, Bitcoin and Ether and all those sorts of things in the crypto sphere and not having a part of it, by legalizing it with ETFs and ETNs through the regulators, the British government, the American government, the EU will all be able to claim tax.
Sure.
It's a phenomenal change.
David, we were talking to Malcolm Pele a few weeks ago about his views on the crypto space and also the other coins, of course, Ethereum, and some of the upcoming coins. I think the second layer coins that have enjoyed some spectacular success. Where do you see the crypto space evolving? Do you see Ethereum achieving the same level of credibility and attracting the likes of BlackRock and others, or is this an exclusive? Is this exclusively about Bitcoin?
Look, Bitcoin was the only one to start with because it's real and it's a coin. The rest aren't coins; they're concepts, right? Ethereum is probably highly regarded, and it's more about the blockchain, and it's sort of separated itself somewhat in the last few months as it's restructured itself away from the Bitcoinness of it itself. But Solana, all those other alternative cryptocurrency, are becoming real. And as part of our whole approach, we're putting a proportion of our Bitcoin holding into second tier because historically, you get slightly better returns in things like Ethereum on a percentage basis and Solana and a few other things. So we're diversifying a small part of our portfolio into the broader, crypto sphere.
Sure. So effectively, Bitcoin is FTSE 100s and Ether and the others are FTSE 250, 350. That's
correct.
Sort of,
yeah.
Okay.
And I also think that at the moment we're talking Bitcoin ETFs, from a real perspective in the States. Wait till they start derivatizing a lot of these things. At the moment, it's a one-for-one physical. So if hedge fund A says, I want to buy $1 billion worth of BlackRock ETFs in Bitcoin, then BlackRock then goes step into the market and buy $1 billion worth of Bitcoin, right? It's a one-for-one. Wait till they start offering leverage and derivatives against this. And there is a lot of discussion about how long this is going to take to happen. Then you're going to see wild fluctuations and a lot more money and leverage stepping into this crypto market.
Well, then it gets crazy, doesn't it?
And it's going to take a while. If you talk gold, there's derivatives in gold, there's margins on gold, there's leverage on gold. It's just another asset class, and the bankers will all work out how to maximize
profit from it.
Products.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you mentioned silver before, and of course we all know how out of whack the silver price is really on the paper front there. So I mean, you can definitely see this coming down the pipe. I mean, in terms of Vinance's sort of approach to this, then it's really from when we've done our interviews, it's all about getting as many miners spinning as you can really before that halving. So I mean, where are you up to at the moment with the amount of miners spinning?
We'd like to have more miners spinning, but we're learning as we go. We're trying to stay as opposed to Argo blockchain, God bless them. We want to stay completely debt free, which we are. We're understanding the market, the expandability of what we've got. We're certainly running very profitably from what we've got. I think our operating cost is sort of sub $15,000 a Bitcoin. We think that baseline cost is achievable as we scale up. But really our main focus is to get ourselves known in the United States now. I would rather spend some of the company's money in brand awareness of what we're doing as a listed entity now that we have the OTC listing, OTCQB listing, and we're working towards DTC eligibility. And once we get DTC eligibility, then we open ourselves up to every electronic trading platform in the United States automatically. At the moment, it's very difficult to trade finance on the OTCQB. There's only a small number of market makers, but DTC eligibility, which should be in the coming days, we hope really opens us up. So, and you've got the halving coming on around the 22nd of April. So there is a team of finance people, including myself, going to be in New York that week, working with OTC markets people, getting the story out. There's a number of crypto conferences that we'll be presenting at. It's time to get our story out there. And we would like to obviously raise more fresh equity out of the States as we grow. And that money will all go into expanding our Bitcoin mining fleet. Right now on the Bitcoin fleet, we're waiting for our first S21 miners to arrive from China. Apparently, they're in customs in Canada at the moment. We're waiting for them to be cleared. And they're stonking pieces of kit. I mean, they're 200 terahash per second miners. The Bitmain Antminer S21. They're about the fastest Bitcoin miners in the world today. Our current fleet are 104 to 100 terahash per second. This new lot that we've got coming in will bring us, start bringing us into the 200 terahash. And we're talking to our Bitcoin machine miner providers. There's a S21 Pro coming out in Q3 this year, which looks like it's going to be rated at 240 terahash per second. So we've just asked, what do we need to do to secure 100 of those machines for Q3 delivery?
Sure,
because to stay in front of the curve and remain a low quartile cost producer, you want to continually upgrade your fleet.
Yeah. David, just you mentioned Argo just there, and of course Argo really was kind of the first iteration of a listed company achieving initially spectacular success off the back of Bitcoin, but of course it acquired its debt levels as a result of the crash in Bitcoin first time around.
There's two aspects, Alan. Yeah. It was a combination of things. They were building big data centers in Texas, hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah, huge overheads.
Lots of employees. Yes, they got miners. The cost of money went through the roof. Forgetting about cost of living for individuals, cost of money for corporates went even higher as a percentage. So, they had borrowed quite a lot of money to expand the facilities that they were building in Texas.
Yeah.
And they had to sell it. And they sold it to a vulture fund. And the vulture fund, didn't completely clean off their debt. And they're still suffering from a big debt book.
Sure.
But, they had to sell off the golden jewels, which is what they were doing because the cost of money was too high.
Yeah.
And their employee level was very high as well. I mean, we speak to the Argo lads. And the ex-Argo lads, they went into debt because they tried to expand too quickly, and the cost of money really hurt them. And the Bitcoin price, it is volatile, dropped a bit, and it doesn't take much for people who have leveraged debt to run at a loss.
Sure.
And that's one of the main issues with this halving. A lot of people who have Bitcoin miners pay for their monthly operating cost with either Bitcoin or with debt. So when the halving happens, each miner will produce technically half as much Bitcoin as it's producing today. The power costs are still the same.
Yeah.
The admin daily maintenance costs are still the same, and a lot of Bitcoin miners will actually become unprofitable the day after the halving. And these data centers are ruthless. If you don't pay your monthly cash call, either with Bitcoin or whatever your contract allows or cash, then they will shut you off. They will just turn your machines off.
Sure. So I following on from that, I guess my next question to you is, given that scenario, given that outlook, and given what happened to Argo previously, you're debt-free, which is fantastic. What safeguards or what steps do you think you need to take looking into the future to ensure that if there is if the halving happens, if there is a subsequent crash in Bitcoin again or greater volatility, what safeguards have you got in place to guard against that?
No debt is our key mantra, and keep our operating costs very low. We run our entire company with 3 people.
Cool. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think we're a very efficient group of 3 people that's singularly focused on running in the lowest quartile cost scenario. We pay cash on a monthly basis for our operating cost, and we want to keep building our Bitcoin up in the wallet, because we see Bitcoin, ultimately going to $1 million a coin, whether it's in 2, 3, 4, 5, or 10 years' time. So we're in the business of hoarding Bitcoin.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And we would prefer to pay cash to our data center providers than use leverage debt or some of our Bitcoin to pay. So that's our model.
Got it.
And that model is eminently expandable. Speaking to the corporates that we speak to, speaking to the Bitcoin ETF guys in the States, that's a good model and very expandable. So we're the other side of a hedge. If you're a hedge fund, you trade your ETFs, but you still need the ability to have the Bitcoin as. So we're an interesting target for a hedge fund.
Got it. Yeah, understand. I know you've also got a background in mining too, David, and obviously involved with the Sonora Lithium project some years back and all the rest of it.
Yep.
Carl Friel, of course, of HVivo Success, Poolbeg Pharma, Cove Energy, Amrit Pharma, launched European Green Transition yesterday, and he was saying, there was a webinar last night, he was saying exactly the same as you. They've got 3 people employed full-time by the company on very modest salaries, and that's his model. It's so I'm really pleased to hear you say that, because I think that's the key going forward.
Look, our model is keep it lean. We pay ourselves £3,000 a month.
Yeah,
we've had a small pay rise. As the year has gone on, we haven't even been listed for a year yet. I mean, we listed on the 21st of April last year, and our pay rise is actually being paid in partial Bitcoin. Yeah. So I now have a wallet that's collecting small amounts of Bitcoin. I'm quite chuffed with that. The mayor of Florida, his entire pay is in Bitcoin.
Yeah. I think it's a great way, as you say,
And in my Revolut wallet, Alan, I can switch my Bitcoin to GBP or US dollars or euros in nanoseconds. My wife said to me, she said, "Look, could you? I'll send you £1,000. Can you buy me £1,000 worth of Bitcoin? So at least we've got something to talk about while we're watching telly in the evening." Right? So I said, "Hang on." I said, "I'll buy you £1,000 worth of Bitcoin now, and it sits in my wallet, and that's yours, and you can pay me back the £1,000 later." And literally in microseconds on Revolut, I acquired £1,000 worth of Bitcoin that sits in the wallet under Lucy's Bitcoin. And I can switch that back to GBP, British pounds, just as quick. It's phenomenal.
Excellent.
And with Revolut, you've got your credit card. You can now, Bitcoin to me is just like any other money. I can tap and pay with my Revolut card. I can, either have it sitting in GBP, US dollars, or Bitcoin, or Ethereum sitting in my wallet. It's phenomenal.
That's great to hear, and it's I'll have to do that with Mrs. G, get a Revolut wallet, and when we're in the middle of watching Mad Men or whatever she insists on watching at the moment.
So Alan, I've just got a message from a mate of mine. This is the guy who won the World Cup for the Qataris, right?
Yeah.
Very well-heeled financial guy. He says, "I've just paid my Miele France for a dishwasher repair of €165. My private internet bank wanted the reason for payment and a copy of the invoice." Right? He goes, "On the basis of this, I've predicted the death of high street retail banking for years. Now I know the neobanks will also not last if they have this level of nonsense. It won't be long before seamless and immediate crypto payments take over forever."
Peer-to-peer. Right. What bank? You mean you say neobanks? You mean the challenger banks?
Well, the neos are the sort of the internet type banks.
Challenges, Tide and
Tide,
Monzo.
even
Monzo,
Revolut,
yeah,
Revolut.
Starling,
But
yeah,
the Tide
those
doesn't do
without the
crypto.
high street. Yeah, I mean,
The
I
Tide
agree.
and Wise refuse to do crypto. P3, they do crypto, Privat 3, but it's the whole back office regulatory. And as I say, the guy had to present his last will and testament to do a melee payment to repair his dishwasher.
It's ridiculous. Yeah,
That's
it
crazy.
is ridiculous.
That's nuts.
Yeah, it is.
No, but that absolutely resonates. I mean, I've got a NatWest account, I think, and you can have this archaic machine if you set up a new payee on the account, which is
those stupid calculator things. Yeah, they are ridiculous.
I mean, that's circa 90s technology. You know, it's crazy. So I think you're absolutely right. The old high street banks are dead and buried. But
You have a place, and look, even I was critical of Bitcoin, a year ago, and I just said, well, look, there's an opportunity here to float something that's a bit different to what Argo are, and make sure we stay away from leveraged debt, because I think that's what sort of really affected Argo's ability to perform. And Jeremy Edelman, who's my co-director, is a very good ex-banker, and we've sort of put together this model for Vinanz. Aquis is not the most liquid market. That's why we're sort of pushing on the OTC QB. We'll get DTC eligibility within days, we hope. And then, we'll be promoting what we do in North America, and hopefully that will drive some volume into the share trading. We're also looking very actively at Frankfurt.
Yeah.
We have a Frankfurt scenario that we can push and adopt right now, but I think our prime focus should be the US, because that's where most of our activity is. It's in North America. But how much money do you spend of the company's capital reserves in promote building a business? So that's also the other angle that we have to be mindful of.
Well, there's a couple of points there that I want to sort of pick up on, David. Of course, it's the pushing over in the United States, but ultimately, what's the big ambition for the company? You want to keep stacking Bitcoin, as you say. What is the investment case for investors to consider? Is it capital growth? Is it protection speculation it's capital growth? Dividends at some point, or mostly capital growth?
Capital growth and dividend payments.
Right.
And I think, with the way we're structuring this, I mean, the board talk regularly about making sure what we create going forward is eminently takeoverable. As a counter and an addition to a hedge fund. We're the other side of the hedge. So create a scalable model that the US fund managers can go, do you know what? This looks like a good acquisition. We want to build this into £1 billion company. And it's scalable. It just requires the right amount of institutional financing as we grow for people who want to share that vision. But you need retail to get you to institutional investment level, and that's why you've got to focus on getting retail engaged in where you're at. And it's difficult for people to trade Aquis.
Yes, it is. But the ultimate goal there, you've just said, is to get to $1 billion company.
Well, we'd like to. I mean, I've had some $1 billion companies in the past, and I can't see why this couldn't be one. And I'm a very big shareholder in it. I'm a founder of it. I'm locked in. I continue to be locked in. And when the opportunity arises, I buy a bit more. So, this to me is something I'm very passionate about. And I think from my perspective, in a 3 to 5 year exit strategy, we could grow this, provided the Bitcoin and the crypto markets continue to perform and governments continue to regulate positively. I can't see why we can't build this into a monster.
Yeah. Go on, Colin.
Sorry, Mark. I just wanted to go back to what we were talking about a little earlier about the banks and about how hopelessly out of date they are. We also spoke last time, Mark, with Malcolm about tokenization and how that's going to affect assets in the city, stocks and shares and everything else. Could you ever envisage a time where you'd be paying, for instance, dividends when Vinanz gets to that point, dividends in Bitcoin, David?
Absolutely. That was one of Jeremy's and my original points of view. Let's
Yeah.
go and build this thing so big that our dividend is, you can either get it in cash or in Bitcoin. Why
I
not?
think that would really, that to me, that's what also.
But there's still a mindset block for a lot of banks in the UK. I mean, if I said I'm going to pay dividends in Bitcoin and you took, okay, so Alan, you go, well, here's my wallet. Well, okay, and the bank finds out, all of a sudden your account's frozen.
Sure, yeah.
Right now, until the FCA adopt that crypto or certain parts of the crypto sphere, i.e. Bitcoin, are legal in all senses, then banks and back office corporate compliance and risk will make it almost impossible for people to hold cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
So you need that mindset change with the regulators. The America has beaten everybody to it through the SEC. The head of the SEC was brought to the table kicking and screaming, but he allowed the ETFs to occur. People don't realize there's been $40 billion US plus invested from institutional players into the US ETF instruments in the last 4 to 6 weeks.
Jeez. Well,
they reckon if BlackRock keep acquiring Bitcoin at its current pace, by August, BlackRock will own 1 million Bitcoin. That's $70 billion. Now, there's only 19.6 million Bitcoin in the world today that will ultimately go to 21 million. They're pretty substantial numbers.
Sure. Just back on tokenization, Dave. We were talking about Valerian blockchain the other week, and the implications that has for the entire financial services industry. And I think the point you made just now about the banks freezing everything because they've got compliance and settlement teams behind the scene, putting blocks and stuff. Once, say, Vinanz shares become tokenized.
I can tell you right now, that is one of my absolute stalking horses. Is I am talking to consultants about being one of the first in the world, particularly in the UK, but we're looking at all the regulatory side of tokenizing Binance shares so that the crypto sphere can buy into Binance through the crypto market versus the fiat hard currency market. And it is a possibility to do through Switzerland, fully secured. And I'm looking at that really hard.
Okay.
Through a consulting group in the UK who specialize in this stuff. So I can see if everything, if possible, I would like to see the crypto world being able to buy Binance shares through CryptoSphere, through tokens. Absolutely.
And of course, that would make paying dividends in Bitcoin, it would take a nanosecond to do, wouldn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it'll all be done through the blockchain.
Yeah.
The best ledger in the world.
Goodness.
Indeed, I mean that would be pretty quite something if you can get to that point, David. That would be really quite something. Are you?
Well, I could do it within a couple of. I think I can do it within 2 to 3 months. The issue is we're sucked of staff bandwidth, right? So right now we are focusing on a US roadshow, OTC markets, DTC. Taking our market maker allocation from 3 market makers in the States to 30 or 40 or 50 market makers over the course of the next month or two. I just don't have the bandwidth at the management to go and focus on Frankfurt, tokenization of the Binance shares and all those sorts of things. And I don't want to staff up because staffing up is very difficult to staff down when you get a downturn.
Yeah, indeed.
Sure.
Indeed. And you mentioned that roadshow, then that's the focus for the next few weeks anyway. Can you give us a bit more of an idea?
Here in the end of April, and then
Okay.
first week in May, there's a monstrous crypto conference down in Las Vegas. I won't be going to that, but one of our team will be.
Okay. So what's the objective of the roadshow? I mean, you've mentioned the DTC. I'm
Well,
not
the
entirely sure
roadshow is
what
to
that
tell
means.
America that we exist.
Okay.
With the DTC eligibility getting approved very shortly, that will expand our market makers and allow pretty much every platform in the United States and globally, like interactive brokers, to trade finance in US dollars through the
Okay.
OTCQB on
Okay.
electronic
So you get
online
that
trading.
DTC, and that means you can then trade through the OTC markets.
Yeah, but it means that we'll be online through all of the platforms.
Right.
At the
Okay.
moment, if you want to buy Binance, it's ring and your broker will hopefully buy by appointment, and you will get screwed on commission.
Sure.
Whereas if we get DTC eligibility shortly, then all the online platforms work, and then E-Trade and Charles Schwab and all those things will do your trade for £6.75 a share or something, or £6.75 a trade, or whatever they advertise at.
Mm-hmm.
But it means that we'll be open to electronic trading in US dollars throughout the entire US platform.
Okay. And were you looking to potentially get a NASDAQ listing at some point?
Yeah, I mean that's ultimately the step, is to graduate from OTCQB to QX and then to NASDAQ.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Now it'll take a while because there's a lot of legals with respect to that. We've been doing a lot of discussions and talk about that. And there's some institutional players that would like to, explore that with us as we go forward. But, as I said, right now we've sort of got limited bandwidth for the management perspective.
So, I mean, this roadshow then, is it sort of, would you anticipate to see volumes perhaps pick up in the trading of Vinanz shares over the next sort of few weeks?
Well, I hope so.
That would be what you want. That's really what you want to come out with, I suppose, isn't it? Increase the volume, tell the United States we're here.
The market will reward you with market share activity when you perform, and that's about news releases. It's about demonstrating growth. It's about demonstrating scalability. It's about recognition that your brand as a public traded company exists. It's not an easy thing to do, but that's where management wants to focus life.
Okay. Good stuff. Alan, do you have any other thoughts?
Yeah, just one thing. What one sort of thought I had. I mean, you've just said, David, you're talking with NASDAQ, but of course you've got to go through the hoops and various other bits and pieces. Really, in a tokenized world, there's almost no need for a stock exchange, is there? Because you've then got everything tokenized.
Well, I don't think that I agree with you in time, but the moment you start talking about removing stock exchanges and removing the ability to have fiat currencies like the US dollar or the GB, you're talking about the disintegration of governments and borders.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a bite too far through the apple right now.
Step too far at this point. Okay.
Absolutely. I mean, you'll end up with world chaos and anarchy. So, the world needs social order.
Yeah.
The big issue for real currencies is the amount of debt that continues to climb, and the fact that it really is credit and a promissory note. The world. I remember driving through New York, when I was running Lonro, and there's this big ticker symbol, on the way to Wall Street that had the rolling US current debt was $17 trillion. And these numbers were so long, and we're just calculating and moving, every tenth of a second. The US debt's now $31 trillion. The British government debt's now £2 trillion. What's the ability of these governments to actually,
They'll just kick the can down the road, won't they? That's all
right.
They can do.
And that's why there's the whole concept of Bitcoin's becoming more and more real. But what's made it absolutely real is the SEC have agreed 1-for-1 ETFs which now means that they can keep an eye on corporate America who are trading Bitcoin and have their share of the profit and loss.
Yeah.
And that's the big thing that's changed the landscape. And I find that really exciting because that creates much more demand than what we've seen in the last, 4 Bitcoin halvings, naturally through what's principally been the locked-in crypto world.
It's complete validation for the asset class, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised even in my own life, how I can move pounds or US dollars to Bitcoin and then move it back again and physically use it to pay for things. Try and smuggle a 30-ounce gold bar through customs into Frankfurt or whatever on a British Airways flight. The beepers will go off everywhere. But
oh yeah,
with your wallet that's on your phone, I mean that really is cross-border.
Yeah.
I have a story about that. I mean, gold is VAT free, so there should never be any questions at the border. But unfortunately, the border people don't really understand that. But I did travel across a border, one to the United Kingdom, with a lot of silver, which, to be fair, did have duty needed to be paid on it. I just wasn't aware of it. And before I left the Netherlands, surrounded by Dutch marechaussee and the United Kingdom border people, they asked me lots of questions, inquiring what other wealth I may have with me. And they said, "Do you have any, what cash do you have?" I said, "No." "Do you have any other things of high value?" I said, "Well, do you include crypto? I've got my ledger with me." And they said, "No." I said, "Well, you might do one day," because they had quite a lot in my ledger at the time, but they were more interested in the silver bars that were worth a lot less, actually. But perhaps it was more obvious. I don't know.
There seems to be a big delinking of gold price v silver price.
Yes. Yeah.
It's just not tracking anymore. I don't know why. Maybe there's too much debt within the silver market. I've got no idea.
I think there's too much paper market. I read somewhere a while ago, I keep coming back to this, that even if every single paper contract for silver that's out there stood to take physical delivery, there is not enough silver in the world mined or currently 20 times over.
Yeah, and there's very big short positions in silver all the time.
Yeah.
Whereas I think, and the other reason that gold continues to rise, and I was reading something this morning, is the amount of central bank buying.
Yeah,
and that's what I heard. Central banks
continue to buy gold, and that's what's creating a quite robust
Western
scenario.
central banks or not Western central banks?
Well, China's been
all US,
all of them.
All of the central banks are buying. I was with the ex-head of the World Gold Council a month ago, and he just said, this started really about a year ago with central banks buying back into gold, and they can just see it continuing for quite some years to come.
Why I can see why perhaps the East banks would be doing it. Why are Western banks buying back? What's the theory there?
It's just supporting the fact that they need something to support their currency and their debt.
Yeah.
Right, so they've realised that they need a hard asset to back it.
Yeah.
Which always used to be the case.
Yeah. Macro uncertainty. I mean, and also China's been buying every month, 17 consecutive months on Gold Telegraph yesterday. China's been adding. So it's that, but it's also the macro uncertainty too. I think we've got.
But I mean, Zimbabwe's got this new currency that's backed by gold. They announced it last week.
Yeah, I saw that.
So we've got plenty of gold to cover it. I mean, God. Zimbabwe's a basket case financially at the moment, but
I can't believe gold. I watch it every day. All-time highs again, up another % today, 23.64. It's at, and I
can see gold going to 3,000. It's been threatening for a while, and there's going to be a good run in gold exploration juniors. It always lags.
Well, it will have to come down. Yeah.
And it's actually broken out though, hasn't it? If you look at it from a charting standpoint.
It's broken right out. But what you need is the exploration mums and pups, and you need that lower end of the exploration market to move, and then you know that we've got a real gold rally going, right? So you've got a gold physical rally going, but you don't have an exploration and production.
Yeah, so watch the junior
rally on the market.
Yeah. Load up on
I think copper is also sort of lagging behind, but I see gold and copper really sort of moving. It's a bit.
I think
Yeah,
that's
and I read this morning the Oracle Power News release on that deal they've done in on Blue Rocks in Western Australia. The phenomenal gold and copper grades there.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
sooner or later you'll see it, the gold run translate to the mining juniors, and money will start circulating through the system again.
Yeah, I think that's where you want to put your money. I mean, I often buy gold sovereigns, but I'm just finding it very difficult to buy them at the minute with gold at all-time highs. It's like I don't want to do it, but it could just keep going and going. But probably your better bet is to put them in the juniors, like you say, the juniors that have got good gold projects, near-term cash flow.
But Mark, you buy in the stock market, it's a gamble. It's like rolling the dice. You could end up with, at least if you buy a sovereign, it's still worth something.
Yeah,
yes,
you've got that physical asset, haven't you? Yeah.
So buying in the stock market is a gamble. Always has been.
Yeah.
How many blue chip companies have gone bankrupt? Remember Enron?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Remember Northern Rock?
Yeah.
Remember Thomas Cook?
Remember Tom? Absolutely. Blue chip companies gone. Yep. Pension funds destroyed.
Yeah.
Any share is a punt.
Maybe I should just
and that's why
continue buying
Bitcoin's
my
an
sovereign.
interesting concept, because Bitcoin is a real thing.
Yeah.
People don't believe it's a real thing, but when you got it in your wallet, you can buy stuff with it. It's a thing.
It's a real thing. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. It's certainly as real as sterling or dollar. Yeah, for sure.
Wow.
Well,
thank you very much, David and Alan, for your time today. Interesting discussion, and good luck next week in the next few weeks in the States. We can catch up.
I'm in the States from the 22nd.
Oh, from the 22nd. Okay, so around the halving time. Well, I'm sure we'll be speaking perhaps.
Well, that's the plan, is to be in the States in the halving, because there'll be a lot of chit chat around it, and we want to be there, sort of in the thick of it. And OTC has a crypto conference, a digital asset conference, on the 25th. So we'll be there for that as well.
Excellent.
Good.
Okay. Well, hopefully
thank you, David. Really good
stuff.
stuff.
All right, Alan. Good to speak to you. Good.
Thank you.
Speak to you again, and then let's talk again shortly.
Indeed. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to another podcast from Market Musings. Tune in next time.